Welcome to the Aromapaths podcast. We are your scentcasters, Jennifer Pressimone and Sharon Falsetto Chapman, bringing over 40 years of combined experience. Aromatics are our passion, and we'll be sharing holistic tips, herbal remedies, and essential oils in a simple way to make your health journey easier. Let's start our walk together.
Aromatherapy, stepping fresh through the mist. Essential oils lifting vibes, feel the twist.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of podcast. We're talking about holistic sustainability, self and plants on this episode, and I'm really excited for this episode because sustainability and plants are all about garden stuff, as you know, that I'm really into. We're also going to talk about sustainability of self, and Jennifer, who's here as well, is going to be adding into the conversation on that because it's important for us to take care of ourselves. And I believe Jennifer's got a good story to tell this week of us taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm doing great now. A little behind the scenes drama. Just to give you guys a little bit of an outtake, we had to postpone the recording of this podcast because of an incident that happened to me that I'm going to be sharing with you in just a little bit that really plays into this topic of sustainability in nature, of our plants, and of ourselves. So I know it's a hot topic for you, Sharon. I know you are a guru when it comes to this. So I'm excited to have today's talk about sustainability.
Yeah, let's get into it. As you know, it's probably no surprise to everybody that I'm going to talk about sunflowers because anybody that follows me knows I'm into sunflowers. I'm still got sunflowers here, just managed to get some of the last ones in the garden going here. Sunflower is a great ecological worker in the garden. Plants tend to set up their own holistic health system in the garden to take care of themselves like we take care of ourselves. I thought I'd talk about sunflower because sunflowers, now they have a symbiotic relationship with ants. And gosh, I do have ants in the garden, and everyone's like, oh no, ants, get rid of them. Oh no, they're all over the place. And I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started out with sunflowers the first year, and I had all these ants running around, and I was like, oh my God, the ant eating my sunflower. But that's because I didn't understand. Ants actually are taking care of the sunflower. Sunflowers have this little sac underneath that's called the involucre. I'm going to say this wrong. Involucre. Calendulas have it too, and it's like a sticky substance which the ants are attracted to. But while the ants are running up and down the sunflowers, they're actually preventing other insects and things coming and munching on the sunflowers. So I thought that was fascinating. So now I leave them. I just picked this sunflower out of the garden, and there was a little black ant on it that was insistent. It was not going to leave the sun. I had to shake it off, and I'm hoping I got it off. So if you see me jumping around, it means I've still got an ant in my hair. So yeah, let's hope that's not going to happen.
While you're talking about ants, I just want to throw in the representation that ants bring to us. You know, all of our different animals, just like plants, have a totem or a theme or an anthem. And with ants, they bring patience. And it's really interesting that with the calendula, with the sunflower, and what the ants are drawn to, that they're protecting, because that's what plants do, right? They're protecting themselves from invasion and attracting what they need, but they're also infusing the energy of patience into the plant, which is going to translate into the oils that we get from them.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So another relationship there, just moving on from that. And sunflowers are really good at phytoremediation in the garden. And so what is that? Sunflowers actually remove harmful toxins in the soil. They clean out the soil of harmful toxins so that other plants can live there. as well. So these are just a couple of fascinating things about sunflowers. I could talk about all day about sunflowers, but we get the oil from the sunflower. We're all familiar with sunflower oil, the carrier oil. And there's also in perfumery, there's a sunflower essential oil, which is very unique. It's available and it does smell like sunflowers. It smells like a green. And the sunflower tea, I suppose I should talk about sunflower tea. A great place to sit and drink your sunflower tea, of course, is in the garden. Take a bit of time for self. And before I throw that back to Jennifer, I want to say with sunflower tea, the sunflower leaves, which I have been gathering. This is just some of the sunflower leaves that I've been getting from the garden here that I'm going to be making teas out of. And just before I tell you that, my neighbor, look at the size of that. That is a
Wow.
sunflower leaf. That
Wow.
she's grown these sunflowers this year. They're 14-foot tall, and this
It's
has
like a
shrunk a little bit
fan.
because I'm drying it out. So it's like, can you believe the size of that compared to my little baby one? I said, wow, you can make a lot of sunflower tea out of that. But yeah, she very graciously let me have one. So sunflower tea is an expectorant. It's also diuretic and it's astringent. It's also traditionally they've used it for high fever because of course sunflowers are indigenous to this area and you see them all around the southwest. So they're really I'm drawn to sunflowers, and for some reason, I guess that's why I ended up living here. Maybe it was the sunflower. I don't know.
I love what you said, how it helps reduce fever and it takes the heat out. And look at the significance of the yellow, any yellow flowers. And I know we had a whole conversation on this in a previous podcast, but just to
Yeah.
remind everybody, the color of the flowers also give us insight into how we can take care of ourselves and also how they do holistic sustainability within the nature, within themselves. But yellow, it's bringing in sunlight, and sunlight is like a flashlight. It helps find your way. So when there's excess heat, excess coldness, excess emotions, excess of something going on in the body, and you need to open that, you need a decongestant, you need an expectorant to move that out, then we definitely want to pay attention to those essential oils, but also carriers that we get from that have the yellow flowers, like the sunflower.
It's like synchronicity that you said that sunflower lights the way, because in our next episode coming up, I'm going to talk about that and how it helped me in a situation. I never really thought about it as lighting the way till you said. So yeah, stay tuned for that one coming up. I think I'm going to toss it back to you because I've talked enough for the moment.
So one of the things that I loved about you talking about the leaves, also, how ginormous that sunflower leaf was. But when we're talking about sustainability, we wanted to talk about this episode just to broaden your mind. We all love the planet. We all love our nature. We all love our plants and we love ourselves. And how can we be good servants and caretakers, not only of
Mhm.
ourselves, but the plants that nourish us and feed us, right? So, using all aspects, when you talked about the tea that you make, using the leaves, we're using all parts of the plant and we're using the flowers and the petals and the whole plant. And it's really important. And I would love for you to share insight because I did gardening before I knew I was going to be in holistic health. But then I really did learn the importance of organic and no pesticides and no herbicides, especially when you're taking stuff straight from the garden
Mhm.
and putting it in your teacup because you don't want all of those harsh chemicals. If you're spraying it on the plant, then you're putting it in your cup and you're ingesting it. It wreaks havoc, and it's also not good for the rest of the garden or for that plant or for the planet.
For sure. Yes. Yes. That's a really good point. I don't use any pesticides. My neighbor who gave me the sunflower seed doesn't use any, but in the middle between us, jammed, is somebody that does use pesticides. And it's really difficult because you kind of worry about that. How does it travel? We hear all about the bad pesticides that we need to go back to organic. It's killing our bees. which you're going to talk about something related to that in a minute. But it is killing our bees because they travel and they land on things. And same with hummingbirds and birds. I have hummingbirds here. You need to, that soil has got to be, and yes, I had a grasshopper infestation this summer with yarrow, and I didn't realize that what was eating my yarrow till it got well into the summer. And I didn't put anything on it. My neighbor, she used neem oil, which is kind of organic, and it kind of got rid of them. But this is going to sound terrible, but I had the best of luck, and maybe it's a little bit of fun. I'm sorry, but they were eating my yarrow, just picking them off and flicking them off over the field out back, go and find another home. Please don't eat my, because we get some really big ones out here. I mean, I'm not talking little ones. I'm talking this
We do
size.
too.
They literally look at you with the big eyes. And it's like, no, go and eat something else. And I know we got to share this with nature. We have good insects and we have bad insects. Now, if you balance your garden out properly, you should, in theory, the good insects take care of the bad insects. It's life in the garden. It's holistic care. They're taking care of each other. We're, getting rid of the ones that are being harmful in the garden. I mean, I've been gardening for several years now, and it's a total different ball game to gardening in England, gardening in Arizona. And I've learned a lot along the way, and we still learn a lot along the way. And I share stories with my neighbor. We commiserate and like, oh my gosh, what's this had on this year? All these different things. I know I've gone off track a little bit there, but taking care of the
Okay,
garden.
that's what the show is all about when we go off on tangents.
Outtake. Yeah, so I mean, aromatherapists, I'm really passionate about getting aroma into understanding all this stuff because it is relevant. When I started out as an aromatherapist, I didn't know where some of these plants, I struggled to find pictures of some of these plants. I mean, we're talking really kind of pre-internet days. So you had to search around and get books, and there wasn't many books showing the actual pictures of some of the more unusual plants. So my goal was to grow some of these, understand the plant, connect with the plant. You might be thinking, well, I don't have a big garden, but you can do it on a patio, just a few herbs, just to totally understand what it is from the plant before you get it in your essential oil bottle and build a relationship with that and understand how fragile some of these are. We talk about how much plant material takes to make an essential oil. It puts it in perspective when you see the plant. I know we can't grow everything everywhere, but the ones that you can, especially herbs, they're quite adaptable wherever you are in the world. You could do a little herb garden and see what they go through to just get you that one drop of oil, what they go through the growing season, from going from just being a little seed to a plant. And perennials will come back every year. They're the plants that come, but they will die back in the winter. But annuals, you have to plant them every year. So like sunflowers, it comes from that one little seed, or some sunflower seeds are quite big. And then this huge, humongous 14-foot sunflower, if you're lucky, comes out of it. But how many of those seeds, and it'll produce the seeds for the next generation, how many of those seeds does it take to produce that sunflower oil that you're using?
Yeah, I mean, in really making that connection, that I think oftentimes we go to the store and we buy products, and when you buy your oils and you buy your carriers, we forget that plants were sacrificed for us to get the therapy, the healing properties that it produces. And that's okay, because gardens need to regenerate. It's whenever you watch, and I love that you said start with one herb when you're, even if you have a small place to start a garden, just start with one. Even if you grow it in the kitchen, even if it's just basil or oregano or thyme or yarrow, just start with one and learn the characteristics. You're going to quickly learn its personality.
Mm-hmm.
Does it like sun? Does it like shade? Does it like a lot of water? Does it like a little? And you really get to connect with the plant and understand how it acts in nature, because how it acts in nature is exactly how it's going to help us. If it's attracted to the sun and it's bringing in warmth, then you know that that remedy, that oil, that carrier oil, or that essential oil is going to bring warmth for cold situations in the body. So it's really going back and learning garden to bottle to body is how
Mhm.
do these plants act in nature? How can we protect them? How can we keep their lifespan continuing? And then how can we use them to serve us? So it really does come full circle. So I love that you talked about that.
And it is getting more important now with weather patterns are changing. So that is going to affect our harvest for essential oils. Some get wiped out now by hurricanes and really bad storms. So we've got to be really conscious of what we're using. When I first started out, it was like, oh, this essential oil, I always have this essential oil, and I need this essential oil. Really think about, do you need that 30 ml bottle because it's on sale or whatever? Or just 2 mils? Is that enough for some of the more of these precious oils? And how much do you put in your blend? Can you substitute it with something that's going to provide the same therapeutic properties or the same scent if you're blending for scent or something similar? And you might think, well, it's not going to affect me in my lifetime, but you've got to think of the future. You've got to think of everybody else, and it may affect you. We've got to sustain this very, very fragile ecosystem. Some things are out of our control, but just in your own kind of ecosystem in the garden, you can control that. And I think the garden is a really excellent teacher. It teaches you patience, it teaches you diversity, it teaches you humility, it teaches you courage and perseverance and all these things that we need in life,
Resilience.
lots and lots of things. And learning all the different plants. I mean, I'm just looking out my window here, there's different kind of sages. What does common sage look like compared to flowery sage? These are two different things, as well as all the other different sages. And that's another thing. If you are harvesting for yourself, be 150% sure plus what you're harvesting, because some look similar. It can be a fatal mistake for a herbalist and an aromatherapist if you're branching out into that. And if you're into distilling, make sure you know what you're distilling as well. If you're not sure, and I still mix things up, wait till a plant comes into flower. Sometimes that helps because it helps. The leaves are very similar sometimes, and it helps to distinguish with the different flowers. And know which plant part to use as well. We use different plant parts for different essential oils. Some we use leaves for some. Sometimes we use flowers for others. Sometimes we use the bark. And there's so much that we could talk about and learn about beyond this. I'm just planting the seed, as it were, of what happens, like we like to say here at Aromatherapy, from soil to scent. It's a whole journey.
It really is. And I love that you talked about the quantities of what to do. So, really understanding the plant, understanding its nature, how does it respond in its natural habitat? How can we protect it? How can we keep it as holistic as possible? And translating that to bottle is how much you're using and when can you use the substitute. So I love that you brought that up because it's one thing that we have to be mindful of is when you're putting a blend together, the goal is to use the least amount to get the biggest bang for your buck or make the biggest impact. You don't need a heavy hand and dump 20 drops of one oil in there because maybe you only need 1 to 2 drops. Because again, those plants were sacrificed, and we do want to be good
Yeah.
servants and stewards of our nature. And so being mindful when you're creating a recipe or you're following a recipe, how much do you really need? And then if it calls for essential oils and carriers and ingredients that are on the endangered list, maybe find a better substitute, or if you must use it sparingly. I think these are some great ways we can conserve and protect and help the sustainability of our plants because you don't know what's going to run out. I know in our lifetime, we have seen some crops become, that were more prevalent before that are now on the endangered list. We're at
Mhm.
risk of losing them. And those are potentially going to be extinct for future generations. And you don't know the climate, you don't know the weather related, whether the country, that the plants are grown in are going to go through a drought or a flood. Or fires devastated a lot of crops several years ago that we couldn't get some essential oils. So just really being mindful of things like that. I love that we are so in sync with how can we protect in the garden, but then how do we protect with use in the aromatherapy world as well.
Yeah, I was reading an article about roses, and the roses have to be the rose petals have to be collected at a certain time. And where I think it was in Bulgaria, the temperature is just changing slightly. So it means they're blooming at different times, and there's a really small window to collect them at the right time. And so it causes problems with getting enough roses blooming, but the premium time for collecting them for the oil. If anybody's looking for resources, I want to give a shout out to my friend Kelly Ablad. Probably heard of her, of the Airmid Institute. She has a list that she puts out, I think it's twice a year, of the plants that are endangered or what their different conditions are. And if you sign up for her list, she also has a membership that you can get other things with. But if you sign up for that list, you can get that list twice a year, and it's really detailed of which plants are becoming endangered or which ones to watch. And you'd be surprised at some of the plants that are on that list. I should have printed it off because I can't think off the top of my head, but I read it and think, wow, that one's endangered. It's like, yeah, it's really
Right.
eye-opening and things we've got to be aware of. It's humbling as an aromatherapist. We've got to be really conscious of what we're using and how to use it. That's why I like to combine herbal medicine with aromatherapy, because there's different ways of doing it. I'm going to be teaching, here's another self plug for me. I'm going to be teaching a class on aromatic teas in September. I think by the time this comes out, actually, I will have done it, but it'll still be available. And it's not just about drinking aromatic teas, it's how can you incorporate that into as an aromatherapist? How do we use it with essential oils and carrier oils and stuff? And there is various ways we can do that. So yeah, you'd be surprised how you can incorporate the different things and still use our essential oils, but use them more consciously, more sustainably by combining them with different things rather than thinking, oh, this needs 20 drops of rose essential oil. There might be another way of using it, and still use your rose essential oil, but put something different in there.
And keeping in mind to support companies who also have this same philosophy, to support companies that really are behind. I love to support, I vote with my dollar, and I support companies who support farms, who make sure the farmers are doing the right things. Like you said with the roses in Bulgaria, is maybe they collected it at 2 p.m. one day, and I'm not saying that's the right time, but they collected it at 2 p.m. And if the weather's changing, maybe now it has to go to 1 p.m. or noon. So you have to make sure that the materials that we're getting, they follow sustainable guidelines as well. And I love to make sure that we're all in unison, because I know when I do that, and that's where I get my quality of oils from and my carriers and my ingredients, that the energy is also going to be in there as well. Doing emotional healing, as long as I have, it's very important to me to make sure that the plants were grown in beautiful environments that didn't have harsh elements, harsh chemicals, anything negative that could affect their energy that could potentially get into the bottle. Because then when we're smelling it, you're picking up on that energy too. So another tip is to make sure that you're supporting companies where you get your ingredients from, who were also a part of the solution and not part of the problem. I'm excited for your class on the teas, because it's really teaching us true integration and true botanicals. We talk a lot about aromatherapy, but we're both herbalists, and we love to integrate the two because
Yeah.
you're supporting from the inside out and the outside in. And that really brings us into self sustainability. How can we self sustain ourselves? And part of that is through our self care practice. So, what are some sustainable self care practices, Sharon, that you can share?
For myself or the garden?
I think for you, you get a lot
Right.
of your self care from your
From
garden.
the
You
garden.
do
Yes.
sustainable practices in your garden. And I think doing the herbal teas and there's other,
Mhm.
maybe
I
some other sustainable ways. I know for
I
me, it's
do.
really creating myself a blend, but I'm very mindful of the blends that I create. I don't create a blend every day, I make a blend for the week because I don't want to be using up my oils every single day because I can make a
Yes.
blend for the week and even as smelling salt and smell it all week and then use that as my aromatic bath on Friday. So it's a way to have that benefit but then also practice sustainability, self-sustainability being the benefit.
Yeah, I do a lot of infused oils as well with herbs from the garden. I know pets use that. We're probably most familiar with calendula oil, which is an infused oils, but you can do lots of different ones as well. Look to your local plants as well. If you know anything about your local plants, there's a plant here, and I can't think of its botanical name because it's kind of long, but it is locally called snakeweed, and it's just about to come into bloom. And I'll tell you a little story about this plant that it's technically a weed, so it grows everywhere here, but it comes into bloom about this time of year. And I never really noticed it. Somebody told me a few years ago, and it was when I was first diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Oh, that's a good plant for fibromyalgia. And I was like, really? And it surrounds my house. It was like it was taking
Wow.
care of me, that it was already growing around my house. And it's like, here I am, and you're just, you're ignoring me. And so I harvest a little bit every year now, and I combine it with juniper because I have juniper trees as well. And it really helps a little bit with my fibromyalgia and all the other pain stuff that I have. But I did not know about this local plants till a few years ago. I've probably walked past it a million times and oh, it's just a weed. So yeah, look towards your local plants as well. I mean, make sure you know enough about them before you start using them. And it can also be distilled. I did a distillation, it was pre-COVID, with a student one-on-one, and we distilled juniper snakeweed in the still, and we made a hydrosol from it. But I managed to get about this much essential oil out of it, and it was really beautiful. And it was so precious. And here's another thing about sustainability. I wanted to keep it for something, a blend that I really wanted to use because it was so precious. Well, I left it way too long, and that kind of evaporated. So you've got to use them as well because it was just so little. And when I went back to the bottle, it was like all dried up, and it was like I wasted that little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's surprising that they do take care of you. And juniper's another one. There's another reason why I must have moved here, because it protects and takes care of you as well. And I have a lot of juniper trees in my yard. So be aware of your surroundings. They might be trying to tell you something, the reason why you're there.
I love that. And we're not saying, hey, use your oils so sparingly and shove it in a drawer. It is going to have a
Mhm.
shelf life. And so when you make if you're distilling them yourselves, if you're using them up, use them so they don't go rancid and you have waste. So that's going to be a really important element to keep in mind too. I promised you guys that I would share my mishap that happened to me
Let's
this
hear this.
week, and I want to share that before we wrap up. I have 10 acres. We've been here for several years and I've walked around for a long time. And we have these nice palms and palmetto bushes on the property next to a lot of trees. And there were some weeds that were wrapped around it and suffocating the plant, and it was dying off. I thought, oh, I want to go be a good steward and help this plant and pull these particular strangling weeds off of it. So I did. And what I didn't know is there was a wasp's nest right on the other side of it. And when I was doing that, I got stung really bad, and I thought it was a
Wow.
bee bite. And so we love our bees, but they don't want to be messed with sometimes. Later on, we did find out, my husband went with me out and I showed him the spot, and we found a wasp nest. And so was a good reminder that we also need to make sure that we are familiar with our surroundings and that we protect that when we can. I'm allergic, very allergic, and this was really, really bad. It caused major issues and cellulitis in my arm almost instantly. And the type of wasp were a guinea wasp, and when they bite you, it can take up to 48 hours to fully come to fruition. And so the
Wow.
first day I did a compress, and I did go to my garden, and I had a lot of lemongrass. I had rosemary. It's very hot right now. So some of my other flowers, I would have done like a lavender and chamomile. I don't have that right now. So I grabbed what I did have. I had oregano, I had thyme, I had lemongrass, and I put those in the rosemary and I steeped it in some water and I did a compress. I had to do a cold compress because my whole arm, it swelled up like a pitcher's mitt. And
Wow.
so knowing little things, knowing that, hey, what do I have in the garden that I could help? I also had aloe. And so I was able to do a cold compress on it. I was able to grab aloe and rub on those areas. And that got me through the first couple days. And so it was really nice herbally knowing what to do. Garlic is a great natural antibiotic that I have found. Aqua Soul Silver was really important. And then olive leaf was another one. But steeping the tea, because oregano, rosemary, lemongrass, they all have those natural properties. So not only did I make a compress, I made an herbal tea. And you really inspired me, Sharon, to know what to do in that situation, because I probably would have remembered to do a compress, but I may not have
Right.
necessarily done an herbal tea. And I know that really helped me keep the infection and the venom of the bite from getting too bad. But because all of that happened, we had to postpone recording this
Yeah.
episode for you because I was really swollen and not feeling well. And I needed to take care of myself to get through that. And so just honoring where you are in your journey. That's our goal. That's our mission, is to supply you with little tips and nuggets that in your time of crisis and maybe you're panicking or freaking out, what can you do? We hope that you remember something
Yeah.
we've shared with you in our episodes that can help you, or either you can come back, and that's why we ask that you subscribe to our channel and have it there so you can go back and listen. Because if you go back to our channel and you're watching it on YouTube, then you can go on the search button and type in a keyword and this episode will pop up. So that's very helpful for you too, in being able to take care of yourself the way that I was fortunate enough to know exactly what to do to keep it from escalating into something that could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I know you called me and said, can we reschedule? Because it sounded really bad. And I was kind of worried for you because I didn't know exactly what was going on. And sometimes, even I made suggestions. Well, have you tried this? Because sometimes in a crisis, and I do this myself, I forget the obvious. It's like you need someone else to
Yes.
remind you, especially when I was going through all that stuff with Harry. I was asking you because you don't, your brain, you're like, oh yeah, I got this, I've got all these tools, but we forget in the moment of crisis sometimes that we need to use these tools. And that just brings me into, I was going to share this recipe with you for this balm that I made, because I've been working in the garden and I come in and, getting older and also my autoimmune conditions, you can't be pain free when you've been working in the garden. And I totally forgot I had this. I have been using it on my thumb where I have arthritis in, and it helps. But I was having really problems with my knee. It was making it difficult to sleep at night. And I put this on it and it worked its magic. And I thought, wow, I forgot I had this. So it's like really simple. Well, it takes a little bit of work to make, but I'm going to tell you what's in it. I've got avocado butter in it, beeswax, comfrey oil, which is a good garden oil, which we didn't talk about, arnica oil, and sweet almond oil in there. And I just melted those. You put your beeswax in first, then your avocado butter. You go by order of hardest to soft, and then you put your other oils in, and just do that on the stove top in a double boil, bain marie method. And then once all that had been melted together, I took it off and I put bergamot in. That's bergamot the fruit, and also bergamot mint in that. These are essential oils. Spanish sage, which is a pretty strong one, which I think helped in this. And then back to our lavender and patchouli I put in there, and that was the essential oil mix. And then I just made these push-up balms, which are really good because you just push it up there and then you just rub it on. And it really, really helped. I forgot that I had that. And I put myself last on the list, and I shouldn't. You can't help somebody else if you're not feeling good. So I fuss about my garden, taking care of that, but it takes care of me as well. I've got to remember it has the ability to take care of me, which was part of my reason for starting to grow the garden. And I've got to remember, with infused oils, of course, you've got to make them in advance. So have your little stock of infused oils. The butters I obviously bought. I haven't quite got beehives to make the beeswax yet, but a little note about beeswax: try and buy from local beekeepers, or make sure it's sustainable beeswax and it's the real deal, not some of this cheap stuff that you see on the internet. It is not the real deal. So that's another thing. It helps support the beekeepers as well if you're buying sustainable beeswax. And then your essential oil suppliers from companies, if they don't know, ask them the questions. Don't be afraid to ask them the questions. Where does this come from? And because some of the bigger companies won't know the answer to that, whereas the smaller companies will be able to tell you. They might have a relationship with farmers. I mean, I'm not going to dish any company or anything. It's something that we're becoming more aware of, and I think some companies are taking a little time to catch up with that. I mean, you can help that process by asking them those hard questions sometimes. Where does it come from? And is it organic? What was the growing process? And if you're not happy with the answer, as Jennifer said, vote with your dollar. Take it to somebody that you are happy buying from.
And there are a lot of great companies out there. Not everybody cuts corners or is bad. There are a lot of great suppliers out there. You have some companies that have been doing it, 50, 60 years. You have some newer ones that are emerging too, but you at the end of the day, you want to feel comfortable with what you're using, who you're supporting. And then also be educated. We both are educators. We both have aromatherapy schools with Sedona Aromatics and the Jensen's Aromaversity. We love educating, and that's why we do what we do. Our podcast is because we love chatting with each other, and you never know. We don't plan any of this. You never know what's going to come up. And that's why sometimes we'll go off on little tangents, but there's a lot of really good nuggets in those tangents. So we just wanted this episode to bring awareness and shine a light on sustainability and conservation, not only in nature, but how does that translate into the aromatherapy world? How does it translate into how we take care of ourselves? Mm-hmm. And we're excited for you to be on this journey with us. And thank you so much for joining us in this episode. And we will see you next time. Our next episode is going to be on women's health. And I know Sharon's going to be sharing some really information, as am I. So Sharon, I'm excited for this next episode that's coming.
Yeah, me too. I am going to be sharing some a story that I know a lot of women can identify with, but I think it's important to get that information out there. I'm at a point in my journey now that I can share this information. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I'm hoping to pass that on, and how aromatherapy can help you with that, and the plants and practices you can use. So yeah, I'm excited about that too, Jennifer. And what you've got to share. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Aromatherapy, stepping fresh through the mist. Essential oils lifting vibes, feel the twist. Herbal teas brewing calm in every sip. Going green, earthy dreams never slip.